Thank you for being here today. We are very happy to count on your participation in this questions and answers session with the authors of the research reports produced in the framework of the iRestore project. Before saying a first introduction about iRestore and our work here, I'll give the floor to Mariama on behalf of Terre des Hommes to welcome you. So please go ahead, Mariama.
Yes, welcome everyone. We, on behalf of Terre des Hommes and the consortium of iRestore, I'm very glad to have this conversation today to participate in this conversation with all of you, to welcome all the participants. I'm the Regional Program Manager on Access to Justice for Terre des Hommes in Europe, and iRestore is one of the projects that Terre des Hommes in Europe is leading on the topic of restorative justice with child victims. A very exciting project with our partners that are going to be presented by Marcos in a minute. And today is really exciting for us because it's really the presentation of a quite extensive research that was carried out in 2020 in the context of COVID. So where we faced quite a few challenges in terms of meeting and having to shift to online, as I think all of us had to do. But we managed now to have this very informative, and we hope that it will be useful for you practitioners that are listening to us about the situation in Albania, Romania, and Greece. And you will see that there's been quite a lot of differences between the two countries. And we are very happy to have with us today all the researchers that have very actively participated in the meeting. And we would really like to thank all of the team that have worked on this. So I will give the floor back to you, Marcos. I wish everyone a very fruitful conversation, and I would like, if possible, because Marcos will give you some tips about how to communicate with us, but I'll be very happy if from you could actually just give who you are, or if you wish, in the chat, and especially what profession you are, so we know a little bit who is attending the call. And please, any question that you have, to put it in the chat, and we'll be monitoring that very carefully. So welcome everyone, and over to you, Marcos.
Thank you, Mariama. So welcome to everyone here. Before explaining a bit about iRestore and about the work we are conducting, I'd like to say a few housekeeping rules. So you see that you are all muted now. And I kindly ask you to write any questions that you have on the chat. And if you want to make an intervention or further explain your question, you will have the opportunity to unmute yourselves as well. But this has to be done by our technical team here. So please, if you feel the need, just write in the chat and we will arrange that. Also, that this meeting, this event is being recorded, and it will be available on Child Hub, our platform from Terre des Hommes. So if you do not wish to have your image there, it's fine if you turn off the videos. But you know, in these COVID times, it will be really nice to see you, to see your faces while we are talking here. Well, these are the first housekeeping rules. And well, welcome again. I will present now what is iRestore, what we are doing here, and what will take place today. iRestore is a project on restorative justice, on the use and application of restorative justice with child victims. And it is led by Terre des Hommes Hungary in partnership with the European Forum for Restorative Justice. And thank you to Emanuela here today representing the forum. With Restorative Justice Netherlands, represented by Annemiki here today. We also implemented in partnership with Terre des Hommes Greece and Terre des Hommes Romania. This is a project co-funded by the European Commission, the Justice Program, and it started in September 2019. Will continue until September 2021. iRestore, it's a project that has three main axes of action. There are research, capacity building, and advocacy. So what we are doing here is that we are trying to improve knowledge amongst national stakeholders on child-friendly restorative justice, and we are trying to empower children to advocate for better protection of child victims. So the main activities of our Restore are as well the research that was conducted by our team, by our researchers that you will be introduced to today, and by our international team of researchers from the European Forum and from Restorative Justice Netherlands. Following this research, we'll have a capacity building stage that will be conducted at 2 moments. We'll have national online trainings for professionals working with children, professionals and policymakers working with children in Albania, Greece, and Romania. And we'll also have an e-learning course that will be available on Child Hub as well. That will be a self-paced course available for anyone interested in the topic of restorative justice. So it will be a very interesting opportunity to learn more about our work and about this topic. And well, this is our first introduction of our Restore, and I'll start talking now about what are the results of this research that was conducted in 2020, and we are so happy to share with you now. At first, I would like to invite Emanuela and Annemieke to talk about the European research reports on the application of restorative justice with child victims. So to you first, Emanuela, I'd like to hear, what can you tell us about the state of play of restorative justice in Europe? And why is this research that was conducted, why is the work we are doing here in our Restore is so important for children? So please go ahead.
Thanks, Marcos. I think I will start first with your second question, because it's the one that I like the most. So why our Restore is, and this research is important. And I think there are several aspects for which we can say that the project itself has been interesting and unique. Maybe the first that I would like to mention is exactly the topic on restorative justice and child victims, which is still quite an unexplored topic. While we know quite a lot on the impact and the practices and the methodologies, and there is quite a lot of research on adults, not much yet is done on children, and even less on child victims, which is quite important because we need to consider the children's specificities. So their developmental maturity, their knowledge, their experience, their capacity to self-control, also their own individual and social differences. So not only in age, but also gender, also the level of the education, the family background, the socioeconomic conditions. And on top of that, we also need to look at the victimization experience. We know from research that actually, even if we have exactly the same type of crime, people would react in different ways. And even if this would be a minor crime, it would be different anyway. So it could have a bigger impact on different people. And on top of that, this victimization experience increases also the vulnerability of children. So that's why the research here of our Restore was really important, exactly to try to shed some light on the use of restorative justice for child victims. The other part for me, which was really fascinating from the beginning of the project, was the involvement of child advisory boards. And this is something for which I Restore, and I know also other Terre projects are quite unique. It really means that children have been involved in the research phase of the project, so they contributed to the findings that we have. This happened in the 3 countries involved in the project, and makes the project really innovative and unique, because we really gave the voice to children to give feedback, not only to experts. We also have obviously an advisory board of professionals in the field, but we also had this children involvement. It was interesting to hear exactly what justice means to them, and also what they think about restorative justice. In most cases, they never heard about it before, but it was really interesting to see yeah, why they think it would be useful or why not, and what could work better, and how these could respond to their justice needs. So what's happening in Europe then? That's a difficult question. I mean, we try to put it together in I don't know how many pages of report. We had some quite limitations in the research, just for everyone to keep in mind that we focus mostly on English-speaking literature. We worked with our own networks. We focused on 3 countries involved in the project, so we are not 100% sure that all what we mentioned there is actually the state of the art of what's going on. But we could already put together quite an inventory of researchers and projects. Maybe the one that is more relevant for all of you, it was a project that was coordinated some years before by another international organization. It was also a European project focusing on the use of restorative justice with children. It was in another 6 countries. Where the format was different because we had mentor and mentee relationship. And for those interested, there is a practice guide, which for us was quite inspiring then, especially for the training programs on this. What you find also in the research, there is what we call the Bible of Restorative Justice with Child Victims. It's a book from Legal, which was published in 2011. She's a professor from Israel. And she developed a needs rights model for bringing together the needs and the rights of children. And what was interesting there was the fact that at the end, the same findings could apply, and the same practices and the same findings could apply for of child offenders, so the harm doers, as much as for child victims. What also, in terms of research, what would need more attention is to look at the role of caregivers and parents in restorative justice, because there was also, this was already mentioned in the research by Taligal, but also there was another research in Belgium, where actually they found out that there is, while we think the caregivers and parents, they have a supporting role, the other risk is that sometimes they might be silencing children, or even increase the conflict which is dealt with in a restorative justice practice. So this is definitely a topic which would need more attention, also to look at these power imbalances between children and adults. And obviously this is something also connected to training. Again, in the report you saw, we tried again to make a inventory also of training programs in the field. Similarly to as for research and projects, we couldn't find much on child victims and restorative justice. So we tried also to broaden a bit the scope of that. We looked also at child-friendly practices and trainings in that field, and also training of young people on restorative justice. What we noticed there is, again, to try to promote trainings where we identify better practices for dealing with children. So, so to look really at the specificities which I mentioned before about the children needs, their protection needs, and also at their level of maturity. But what was interesting, which comes from an example from Belgium, from 2 practitioners, is also to try to look at specific creative tools to merge verbal communication with non-verbal communication. So we had really concrete examples from 2 Belgian practitioners there. Unfortunately, there is no training specifically on this topic, on how to use, for example, like these emotion cards, board games, toys, movement, or how the body can also be used to express certain feelings and also to tell certain stories. So also from the experience of these mediators, they found out that there is not something specific, and they had to get inspiration from other fields like art therapy or workshops on collective intelligence. So they really had to be quite creative. So it's another field that I think we should definitely work on in the future, to try to bring together all these practices that can be useful for working with children. Just a few last things, just as some takeaways from the project, which shows as a reminder for everyone here, is that restorative justice doesn't work in a vacuum. So it's really important to keep in mind that it works as part of other programs. So we cannot think, for example, in cases of trauma, that restorative justice would give the healing for such trauma. So it's really needed that we cooperate with other type of services. And this is even more important when working with children, to bring together these different sectors. And we try to do that in a little way through the next trainings that we organize for this project, where we try to bring together professionals from different fields. Another point which I mentioned before is exactly this involvement of the community of support. Which means the parents, the caregivers, but it's not only that, and also to try to understand better what is the role and how this can be really beneficial for children and when actually it's not. And this is really linked to the preparation phase, which is a crucial phase for all restorative justice programs, also for adults, but in these cases probably they need even more attention. And the last takeaway was about establishing a restorative culture, which is something that we try again through these multidisciplinary programs to bring together, but also with an idea to go a bit beyond restorative justice. So in some cases, there are some specific practices within restorative justice that could be relevant not only for practitioners in the field, but also for others working with children. And they are really in line with child-friendly approaches to justice. I'm thinking of nonviolent communication, active listening, conflict resolution. So we should be a bit more creative in that and try to engage professionals in a different way. We see that also now happening in some restorative city movements. I had a really concrete example, maybe I will tell it later, about a baby gang in Como, where you could really see how it was really important to bring together different type of professionals and be creative, not only on restorative justice, but really to be creative for the benefits of children.
Thank you very much, Emanuela, for your words. It's very interesting to hear of the findings on the European research reports. And just to give you further information to all the participants, is that the research of Restore, it resulted in 4 research reports. One European report that was produced by Emanuela, Anemiki, and Malini, another colleague of us that could not attend here today, and 3 national reports. One report about Albania, one about Greece, and one about Romania. And we'll have further discussions about each of these countries on the following moments of this event. And before I continue our talk about the European reports, I would like to highlight a few things said by Emanuela. First is that indeed the child participation and empowerment components of Restore, it's a very, very big component of this project. Children were directly involved in this research on the 3 implementing countries where we work in through our child advisory boards. So children would ask about their understanding of restorative justice, and of course we train them in that as well. Children, we worked with case studies to see how they feel about when restorative justice is applied, if they believe this is something that can be useful for a child in contact with the justice system. So it was a very participative research, and we think we are very, very happy with the results of these consultations. And besides this participation on the research, we will also help children to produce child-led awareness raising campaigns about restorative justice and about children's rights. So this is also something I wanted to highlight, that children, we are not only doing this for children, we are working with them. We want to empower children to better advocate for their rights, to be really actors of change in the world. And okay, following these comments, I would like to ask Anemiki, from the results of the research, from the work that you did, we can see that within international legislative documents, the importance of restorative justice, which focuses on the harm done by involving the victim, the offender, and the community, has been acknowledged and encouraged. So this is something that is already, exists on the international framework. So do you think that we can talk about a right for young people to access restorative justice?
Thank you, Marcos. Yes, interesting question. And thanks also for Emanuele for sharing already many of the insights we got through this interesting research. And indeed, we started our desk research by looking at these international standards about human rights standards, children's rights convention, and all additional guidelines and also framework decisions that have been taken in this field of victims, of juvenile justice, of broader issues that are important for children's for children and for children victims. That is definitely a specific group, and indeed. It's also the mission of our European Forum for Restorative Justice to grant access of restorative justice to anyone in Europe. So also children, and especially also child victims. We did notice, and that's why we also started together with Terre on this project, that there is a lack of knowledge still about child victims. It was in the beginning almost a forgotten group. They are vulnerable and not seen, but they also have rights. And what do they want? They need to be empowered and they need to be listened to. That's an obligation also if you look at these international human rights standards. Yeah, for me, I'm working in this field of restorative justice and children's rights for years already, and I'm really stating that restorative justice is and should be a children's right. Everybody should have access to it for any crime at any stage, and this is also a government obligation. Governments need to make sure that restorative justice is in place. There are also binding instruments that state this. Look at the EU Victim Directive, and that luckily also initiated much laws and regulations in many European countries and even beyond. So I think slowly we're getting there. We saw also in our research when we looked at the legal status of restorative justice for young people in Europe, that much has been created, and also the 3 countries involved here. For example, Albania has really good laws in place. But of course, good law in the books is not the same as in practice. So where we need to focus much more on is on this culture change, to motivate judges and prosecutors to really work with it, to change attitudes, to impact on policy. There's still world to win. But I do see that restorative justice is a priority in response to crime and to the harm created by crime. If you also look at the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child is of 1989 and does not yet use the wording restorative justice. But every document that has been issued at the UN level or a Council of Europe or EC after 1996 dealing with child justice or victims' rights, they all state that restorative justice should be a priority. And also the General Comment 24 of the Committee on the Rights of the Child is stating this. So in that sense, we also should see it as a priority. It is a human rights, it's a children's rights, and I think that's the basis of our work.
Thank you, Annemieke. Yes, I see that we have a question on the chat already, but before addressing that, I'd like to make just a proper introduction of you, Annemieke. Annemieke Voltius from Restorative Justice Netherlands, who was one of the authors of our European research report, alongside with Emanuela Biffi from the European Forum for Restorative Justice, and Malini Laxminarayan, if I'm not mistaken. I'm sorry if I got her last name wrong, but yes, just wanted to correct that quickly. Well, so I see that we have a question from Rogelio Pineda. Thank you, Rogelio, for this question. I see that you're asking about the issues, the challenges of finding affordable restorative justice courses online, of the access to this kind of information. Before giving the floor to Emanuela or Annemieke, if you would like to further talk about that, I would like to highlight, Rogelio, that as part of the Restore activities, we are currently developing an e-learning course that will be available free of cost to anyone interested in restorative justice. This course will be available on Child Hub as part of our project, and this is part of our efforts to make this kind of information available to everyone interested, to really diffuse, to really work on the access to knowledge, to education, to everyone interested. So I wanted first to highlight that. And please, Annemieke or Emanuela, if you would like to
I think I can respond on behalf of the European Forum for Restorative Justice, at least.
Yes.
I mean, we provide trainings and seminars, webinars. I mean, like most organizations, in the past year also we moved most of the activities online. It's true that we ask a fee, but not always. So just for you to know, Rogelio, just keep following the forum. Not all the trainings are paying trainings. But what I want to say is also that we always take into consideration specific financial needs. So we receive often questions for waivers to fees. So I think that if that's an issue, we never really send someone at home just because they don't have the finances to cover the cost of the fee. But on the other hand, we need to cover the cost of the organization. So yeah, we need to be also realistic with what we can do, and also to pay trainers who take their time for that. But on the other hand, what I also want to say something else, which is maybe a less practical thing. I think this also has something to do with, we had this discussion, we work with working groups in at the forum, and we had recently a discussion specifically on the type of profile that facilitators have. Because at least in Europe, most of the facilitators are white, middle-class professionals. And it's true that we don't have access maybe to other type of target groups. So how to train and how to make sure that we would have more variety in the professionals. And it's really important, for example, in cases of hate crime or yeah, place a specific type of cases where you really need to have diversity and to make sure that there is a sort of understanding of different intercultural conflicts. So, but thanks for the question, Rogelio, and I really hope that you can contact the forum. I saw the tweet right now. I don't take care of communications, but I will maybe make sure that my colleague will follow it up. But in any case, you can always write us, so go ahead.
Thank you, Emanuela. And I'd like to highlight as well that on the European research report that I have available on Child Hub, we'll post the links to you on the chat just to make sure that you have access to it. We have an overview of existing trainings and existing materials on restorative justice. So on this report, I'm sure you'll be able to find manuals, guides, available courses, on restorative justice as well, not only conducted by the European Forum or by us, or as there are simply products of other projects that were conducted in Europe. So I highly invite you and encourage you to consult these reports, to check this material. And yes, I see that Emanuela said that the European Forum also has 2 new Erasmus Plus projects where they will launch a call for participants in a few months. So yes, thank you Emanuela for sharing this, and thank you Mariama for sharing the link to the European reports.
Yeah.
Yes.
I also would like to add that it's really important to have ambassadors like you, but also from the younger group and the young adults, but also the students that we are working with in this project. We do see so much enthusiasm, and we see some new ambassadors coming up. So last week I was still having a meeting also with Defense for Children colleagues in the Netherlands with young students, and they are so interested in this topic. That was really nice to see. So we should keep them involved.
Thank you, Annemieke. It is indeed encouraging to see so much interest on the topic of restorative justice among professionals and among young people. And on this matter, I would like to thank the judge, Raul Alexandru Nestor, that recently gave an interview to our team in Terre, Romania about his work and about restorative justice. So it's really good to see this kind of interest from professionals working the justice system, working with children. So thank you, and thank you everyone that helps us. I can also see here Bruno Demay that worked with us on the child advisor boards in Romania with an amazing job with youth, with young people. So thank you as well. Thank you everyone that supports us, that helps to further, disseminate restorative justice. So we are very happy to count on your support. We will, if you have any question about, yeah, I can see that we have already a question on the chat. Is for the participants, has any of you been involved in using restorative justice with children in your respective countries? If you have any interesting example to share with us, please go ahead on the chat, and we can also give you the floor for a short period if you want to share something in particular. So please don't hesitate to write on the chat. Okay, thank you. Going ahead with our meeting, we will talk now about the research report from Greece. This report was conducted by many authors, and not all of them can be here today. As a representative of the authors, we have here Cecilia Popa, that is also our national trainer for the Romanian trainings that will take place from 16th of February 2021, and we have the national trainer for Greece, who is Katerina Sulu. She was not involved in this research. However, she will be our national trainer for Greece, and I'm sure she will have also very interesting insights to share with us today. Okay, so Cecilia, I would like to ask you a bit about the conclusions of the research report for Greece. What can you tell us about the consultations that were conducted with key stakeholders, with professionals, with policymakers, with children as well? And what were the conclusions that you think we can arrive to from the work conducted in Greece?
Thank you very much, Marcos, and welcome to everyone. First of all, I want before I'm going to get to answer your question, I'd like to clarify a few things. First of all, because I'm assuming some of the colleagues here were wondering why am I talking about the Greek report, just to assure that I was fully in charge of the Romanian one, and I just happened to help just a little bit with the Greek report. And because I see, and I want also to join you, Marcos, in welcoming and also thanking Judge Nestor and Bruno, because they were also respondents in the Romanian report. And I thank them very, very much for taking the time to also join us today. So without further ado, I'd like to first set a bit the ground about how mediation works in Greece, because I think it's extremely important before addressing the conclusions to explain a bit how mediation works in Greece for people who perhaps are not familiar with how the practice is working in Greece. So first thing first is that there is no restorative justice in Greece under this concept, something that's quite similar to the Romanian context, something that I'm going to address later on. So in Greece, we can find mediation, right? First of all, we can find it in the criminal proceedings. And this is based on the provisions for juvenile offenders of the Greek penal code. Mediation between a juvenile offender and the victim, be it an adult or a minor, can be ordered by the court to get into mediation as a reformatory measure, right? And in cases where mediation is proposed and is implemented, then is facilitated by the juvenile probation officer. And that's something we can discuss even further later on. Second, we can find mediation provided as an alternative resolution in cases of domestic violence, right? Based on a law from 2006, trying to fight domestic violence and other provisions. And if mediation in these cases is implemented by a mediator registered in the registry of mediators of the Ministry of Justice. And then there is another situation. We have the possibility to alternatively resolve civil and commercial cases through mediation as provided in a law from 2010. And in such cases, we can find children involved in cases such as family dispute, right? Disputes of custody. And then the fourth context where we can find mediation in Greece is within the school system. So in Greece, there are programs of mediation. They are called peer-to-peer mediation between school students. And the processes are always supervised by the school teachers, who are also the ones who are training the students in mediation after being trained themselves in mediation. But just bear in mind that compared to the other three cases where we can find mediation, this one is not institutionalized. It is not part of any legal framework, if you like. So now I needed to lay the ground on how mediation works in Greece in order for you perhaps to better understand the conclusions we came up based on the consultations we had in Greece. So first, one of the first conclusions was that respondents stressed the lack of protocol, as there is no governmental nor institutional agency to coordinate and collect data on issues related to child's rights, for example, or any alternative measures such as restorative justice. Then a second conclusion was also addressing schools. So going back to what I just said about the peer-to-peer mediation is that apart from the fact that it is not institutionalized, when implementing mediation in schools, teachers need permission from the Teachers Association to implement peer-to-peer mediation, which sometimes can be an issue. But when they do receive permission, sometimes teachers are not confident that they can communicate it further with the headmasters in the schools. However, whenever this peer-to-peer mediation is implemented in the Greek schools, the respondents to the research in Greece mentioned that 80 to 90% of school children reported that after participating in a mediation, they did not come into conflict with their peers, which I found it to be extremely fantastic. Then another conclusion related to the criminal justice system, again, related to what I just said about having the juvenile probation officer being the one facilitating the mediation between the juvenile offender and the victim, again, be it an adult or a minor, is we need to bear in mind that sometimes it comes with inconveniences through the fact that the probation officers are primarily representing the interest of the child offenders, right? So let's say in a case where we can find a child offender and a child victim, a probation officer find itself in a biased position when implementing restorative justice. And this is a bit of the problematic aspect when it comes for, I mean, while it's extremely extraordinary that there's been these initiatives to train professionals to also provide this alternative and access for children to a different form of justice, sometimes you also have to look on the way we do implement such alternative measures. Then also another issue raised in during the Greek consultations is that professionals in general are not trained in restorative justice, nor in child's rights and child-friendly approaches. And this can lead to a sentiment of uncertainty in choosing restorative justice by judges and prosecutors and lawyers, right? And even because we talked about the probation officers being the juvenile probation officers being trained in RJ, sometimes these trainings are not systematized, right? There's no constant training development for these professionals, and this is one of aspects that should be addressed. And another conclusion, one of the most important ones, I could say, is that when discussing with children in Greece, it's something that I've seen also happening for the Romanian, in the Romanian context, is that children were, most of them did not hear about restorative justice before, mediation before. But when they got to learn about mediation, they were extremely intrigued by the practice of mediation. And it's something very nice that they said, which is that when asked if they see it applicable for children, they answered that actually for children would be, there would be a higher chance for restorative justice to work for children because, quote, children are easier to change because they have a whole life ahead of them. And this is their own words, which is interesting because this is one of the main core of the three researches, right, in Greece, Albania, and Romania, to focus on children. And it was equally interesting to learn that while after they learn about the process, what restorative justice means, what would be the process in implementing it, they were more than willing to accept it as part of, if this would be an option on a constant, regular basis to access it, if that would be the case. And yeah, I mean, I could continue talking about, but I guess also Katerina was trying to add some information here. More than willing to discuss even more if you have questions in particular about the Greek research.
Thank you, Cecilia. That's very interesting to hear. And again, I really invite everyone to read the full report, to read the full 4 reports if you have time. It was a very extensive work, and I'm sure you'll find very, very relevant information there. Thank you, Martin, for sharing your experience. I will continue now with the Greek discussions, but later on, Martin, I'd like to ask you if you want to share a few more words about these cases, if there is anything you would like to share with everyone. So continuing to talk about the Greek report, more about the Greek context, the Greek system. In fact, I'd like to invite Katerina Soulou, that will be our national trainer for professionals and policymakers in Greece about restorative justice as well on the framework of iRestore. So, Katerina, I wanted to ask you that from the research that was conducted, and also from what Cecilia said, we can see that restorative justice appears to be at its very, very early stages in Greece, in both criminal justice for adults and in child justice as well. So many children in Greece do not have access to the benefits of a more restorative approach and practices when they are when they are in contact with the justice system. So what would you say that are the key recommendations to overcome this challenge and make sure restorative justice is accessible to children in Greece?
Thank you, Marcos, very much. Hello, everybody. And first, I would like to thank Cecilia for her presentation. It was really clear and full. So thank you a lot. And before answering your question, Marcos, I would like to quickly introduce myself. So I'm Katerina Soulou. I'm a Greek legal scholar doing my PhD on restorative justice in Aix-Marseille University in France. I'm also a board member of the European Forum for Restorative Justice. Here in Greece, I'm actually involved also in another project, a European project, slightly connected to this one. I mean, it's also about training, but training for judges and public prosecutors. So I collaborate as a researcher with the university, the Aristotle University in Thessaloniki. And in this project, the Restore, I will be the national trainer, as Marcos said. So I will try to address this, some thoughts of about this question, but let me start with a general remark about the Greek juvenile justice system. And I would like to say that despite the difficulties of the country due to the economic crisis of the last years, which means actually that we have a lack of infrastructures, of staff, etc., I want to say that the Greek professionals, so the judges, the probation officers, educators, etc., work zealously, I would say, to do their best for juveniles. And I think that Greek professionals are really open to new ways and practices for better doing their job. So that is why I feel optimistic that despite these difficulties, a better and more stable development of restorative justice can be achieved in our country in the future for both juvenile and adult justice. So what are some of the challenges we need to deal with in Greece towards this direction? First, I think that the main challenge is the lack of information and education on restorative justice, and that concerns both the professionals and the civil society. But I will focus more on academic education and on professional training on restorative justice, because despite the existence of a legal basis, there are few truly restorative practices which are implemented in the country. Why? Because of the lack of knowledge on this specific issue, or topic actually. I give you the example of the Article 122 of our criminal code, which theoretically offers a clear opportunity for a victim offender mediation for juveniles. But in practice, we know that the application of this article is offender-oriented, that is to say closer to the rehabilitation rather than to restorative justice. Another more general challenge in Greece is that we need to put in question the legalistic and repressive character of our criminal justice. I mean that often the principal purpose for the introduction of so-called reconciliation processes, etc., is to simply decongest the courts rather than to achieve a real penal reform, which would imply to question the repressive mentality, the fairness or unfairness of justice, the satisfaction of victims, etc. So I think that these kind of questions are not really addressed in Greece. There are indeed practices to decongest the courts, such as, for example, the plea bargaining or the alternative dispute resolution, the mediation for civil matters recently introduced in the Greek legal system. But we know that restorative justice is more than that. So I would say that legal basis per se is not sufficient if the professionals do not understand the deeper value of restorative justice philosophy, the possible benefits of restorative justice in practice for victims, offenders, and the civil society. And of course, if they do not experiment it, that means to see how it works in practice in their daily work. And here I come to the last challenge I would like to point out. Besides the information and the education on restorative justice, Greek professionals should not be afraid to experiment and to discover restorative justice in practice. For instance, Belgium is an excellent example of a bottom-up development of restorative justice. That means that in Belgium, we first experimented in practice, and after the legal basis was created for that. We need to try restorative justice in practice and to create a Greek way, let's say, of doing restorative justice. That is to say, adapted to the culture and the particularities of the country. Finally, my last remark is that an interdisciplinary approach and a better collaboration among Greek professionals of different fields and disciplines would be very useful for this direction. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Katerina. And I see your intervention also in line with what Emanuela said at first, that one of the objectives of Restore it's exactly to encourage the implementation of a restorative culture in these three countries in Europe. We're talking about changing of behaviors, changing of attitudes, and this is also part of our goals with Restore. Please, if anyone has any question that they would like to ask the researchers so far, everything is very welcome on the chat. I can see that we are having quite an active conversation here. Thank you for everyone involved. And if anyone has a particular question you want to ask, please write it down. Otherwise, we will continue with the presentations, because sadly we have to finish this by 3:30. So we have not that much time available now. Yes, so I would like to continue our discussions here now to talk about the research report in Albania. And for that, we have a researcher that will also be our national trainer for the trainings in Albania, who is Dr. Mariana Semini. And please, Mariana, if you could introduce yourself a bit to tell us what you do in Albania, and tell us also about how is restorative justice and child justice implemented in Albania right now, because I think that from the research, from the results of the work you conducted, we are very, very fair to say that the Albanian society has a strong tradition of reconciliation and mediation in criminal, civil, and family law. So I'd like to hear from you, what is the actual situation on restorative justice and mediation in Albania in the context of child justice? Please go ahead.
Thank you, Marcos. Hello to everybody. It's a pleasure to be in such a kind group and very active and interested for the topic. I just want to introduce myself shortly. I am a full-time professor in the magistrate school in Albania. That's a school for judges and prosecutors. I have worked 10 years in the faculty of law when I was a young professional. And then from 97, I work in the magistrate school. But besides of that, in parallel way, I have worked as expert and part of the team in the Foundation for Conflict Resolution that was set up in 95 as an initiative of Albanian Supreme Court and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Denmark. From that time until now, I just gave the course of mediation in the School for Magistrates and at the same time work as expert in different projects. When I was invited here by my very dear colleagues that now are part of Terre in Hungary, I was very much enthusiastic about the results and about the possibility to change our experiences and good practices among each other. And so I think that until now, together with Romanian colleagues, Greek colleagues, we just compared different practices, different legal frameworks, and we learn from each other. So it's true, Marcos, that Albania has a good tradition, mostly in mediation, but mediation is underlined as one of the main possibilities, alternatives of dispute resolution and the restorative justice. From the 5th century, we had our customary law that is arrived until now, and time after time, it's part of our, moral code, if I can call so, and customs, because there were a very strong institution of forgiveness and reconciliation among this customary law. So mediators were people that mostly were identified because of their maturity, because of their good trust among the community and so on. So they played a good role in all kinds of conflicts, but as Marcos just told when introduced Albania, mostly in criminal, civil, and family aspects. Now, if we can be focused more in mediation, and mostly in mediation in context of juvenile justice, we can say that Albania is in a certain, let's say, or let's call advanced moment or milestone in the path of specialization in the field, because we have different laws, different codes that are dealing with mediation and with restorative justice program. Let's begin with a kind of underlining the main law on mediation that provides private mediation, and it has created some good practices, because now we have the National Chamber of Mediators, and we have a considerable number of mediators that are registered in the National Register of the Ministry of Justice. And we have different projects, mostly from international partners, that created a good possibility and chance to go step by step to a very specialized group of professionals in different fields. So if we can call culmination of the legal framework in context of juvenile justice was the approval of Code of Juvenile Justice. And this code that entered in force in January 1, 2018, it's the main law that provides the three status of a child: child as offender, child as a victim, and child as a witness. And in each aspect gives to us a full status and all the ways how the procedure can go step by step in order to facilitate their diversion measures towards a restorative of justice program or mediation program. In Albania, it was organized the 10th International Conference on Restorative Justice, and it created a very good momentum, if I can call so, of inspiration for institutions, for professionals, and for community in general, because it has a very good, created a good chance for public awareness in all these aspects. Now, we have a positive or good practice, because in all levels of our institutional machine, beginning from legislative to executive and to judiciary, it is a good understanding of both concepts, better for mediation, but also for restorative justice. So now we are not in the traditional role of a mediator, because we worked strongly towards a new model. After the communists fall down, people wanted everything new. It was a moment when everything should begin from zero. And among others, even for mediation, it was created a kind of, allergic reaction. But it was 2-3 first years after that, community and institutions understood that positive experiences, positive institutions, positive programs or procedures that are used in the past it's better to continue in the present, and it's better to be conserved in the future too, because it's important to create a kind of inheritance in the community, and people awareness was necessary, legal framework was necessary. I totally agree that it's not, it's not achieved the goal only with the approval of the law, because in the final end, law is just a piece of paper with some words on it. Without application, it has zero impact in community. So if in Albania we have a very excellent legal framework, we are working strongly into other components, and it was underlined even by main actors and main institutional representatives that are part of, have been part of our interviews and questionnaires, part of our study in order to prepare this report. And among them, we have seen that it is a good will to work in order to raise capacities, in order to improve capacities, and to strengthen all capacities in an advanced level. Because it's not easy to work with children, it's not easy to work in juvenile cases. I think it's double or triple time more difficult to try to explain to a child or juvenile which are advantages of a mediation agreement when he comes from the prosecution office and when he comes from the court and in the presence of all these authorities. So it's art to organize their investigation, and it's science to organize the best questions in order to interview them and in order to get the proper information and to make them feel ready and to win their willingness in order to come voluntarily in this procedure. So these are some aspects and some of the challenges we have, but it's a good news that now, mostly 2 last years after the approval of the Code on Juvenile Justice, a lot of international partnerships are signed in Albania. One of them was with Terre, Albania, and since it is the case, I just want to thank Orinda Gioni for this possibility. We had a good academic year in the magistrate school, training new judges and prosecutors, and they and the magistrate school did a great job for the, capacity building. So in this aspect, it's a long road to be done. We are part of the second phase of the project of Terre, Hungary, and I think it's an excellent chance to continue with the training now, with multidisciplinary training, with different professionals together, and it's a good chance for me to be part of you and to be part of the team. And honestly, I've learned a lot from this project. And at the very end, when the report was finalized, I was very much satisfied. I couldn't believe it was me written or it was all of you written, but I think that all of us are authors of such a good work. So thank you. I am very much welcomed for questions.
Thank you very much, Mariana. We are very happy to be working with you. And we all learned a lot from you. You should be very well aware of that. It's always a pleasure to hear your thoughts, to hear your comments. It's very interesting to hear. So before we continue with the Romanian report, I'd like to address the questions we have on the chat now. I see that we had a question from Adina Kodres. Please forgive me if I mispronounced your name. I see that you are from the National Authority for the Persons with Disabilities, Children and Adoption, Ministry of Labor and Social Protection. You're a psychologist, a senior advisor and trainer, and you said that when we talk about juvenile justice, we're talking about well-trained specialists and teamwork in the best interests of the child. Do you know one of the national networks of professionals and how they relate? About that question, Adina, I believe that you are asking about professional networks at national level, and to know how they cooperate, how they work in relation to restorative justice. Please correct me if I got this wrong. But I think that I see that Cecilia, you already answered that on the chat concerning Romania. And I was wondering, actually, from Annemieke and Emanuela, if perhaps at the level of the European Forum or Restorative Justice Netherlands, if there is any particular network that you could share or that you could talk about about restorative justice, not necessarily at the national level, because you are working from Belgium and the Netherlands, but more of a European network.
I'm not sure I understood the question though. It's because, yeah, no, I'm not sure if I understood it. Is it with which type of professionals? With restorative justice or only restorative justice? So at the nation, and which nation exactly?
Yeah.
At the national level. Oh, sorry, I don't think.
Madam Codres is part of, she's Romanian, and the reason why I was referring, because in Romania, for instance, we do have a network, let's call it this way, of mediators. But I'm going to touch upon this soon when I'm going to address the Romanian report, that unfortunately we don't have any interdisciplinary sort of network of professionals working on restorative justice or mediation, because we don't have restorative justice, we have mediation in Romania. And happy to address even further this with you, Madam Codres, if you want.
I mean, as far as I know, national networks like registers, maybe, like I know that Italy is working on a register for mediators, for example, but I don't know in how far they would really would do interdisciplinary work with other professionals. In Belgium, I don't think there is really a register. I mean, we have the two big umbrella organizations working with adults. One is in Flanders and one is in Wallonia. And then we have two others for in cases of child justice, but I don't know if there is a national network as such of practitioners.
Thank you. Go ahead. Yes, please.
Yeah. In the Netherlands, our mediators are together in a platform. There are registers for mediators who really want to be involved in serious mediations and also in mediation in penal cases. We do have also other forms of victim offender conversations which are dealt with by another organization and who are more dealing with the emotional recovery, and they are really working through one organization. But the mediators working in the criminal justice field, they need to be part of a movement, and they have to be registered in the court, so all kind of different steps are taken, and they always work in our system as co-mediators. So there is a lot about intervision, and they share a lot of knowledge. So and there's one which is called the Mediators Foundation for Mediators in Penal Cases, has started a few years ago, and that's a network of about 120 mediators. And in addition to that, like my own organization, Restorative Justice Netherlands, is also a platform organization, but that it's much broader in the full restorative justice area. And what we do is to provide information and lobby work, etc., and try to bring the message of restorative justice further.
Maybe just to add one more, experience is the one of the family justice centers, which bring together different type of professionals, mostly working on domestic violence cases, but there they have different type of professionals working under the same roof and trying to deal with one case, and then they have psychologists, mediators, lawyers, etc. So I don't know if that could serve, and I know that there is a European network for that.
Yeah.
And normally in each country they should have these family justice centers, they're called.
Yeah, this interdisciplinary cooperation, that is also in different countries more of an item now, and in our Dutch criminal justice, in the criminal justice field, we do have also when cases are decided upon, there's a cooperation among police, public prosecutor, and the care organizations. So in that sense, also restorative justice is sometimes already addressed.
Thank you very much, Annemieke, Manuela, and Cecilia. Madam Kodres, please don't hesitate to send us further questions if something remains unclear, and also to contact us after this event if you want to have further information. So I see that we had a question a bit earlier from Giorgio Nestor about asking if is legal assistance compulsory for child victims in Albania and in Greece. And about this question, Judge Nestor, I would like to highlight that from next week, Terre des Hommes will start a new project on legal assistance and legal aid for children in conflict with the law. That is called Clear Rights. And I think that this topic will be highly in our agendas for the next months. But particularly about your question, please, Mariana or Katerina or Cecilia, if you have anything that you can add on the chat, please go ahead. I'm sorry, we are close. We are very close to the end of this event, so sadly we'll have to move on to continue a bit. And also there is another question from Judge Nestor, is that are precautionary measures mandatory if the victim is a child in Albania or in Greece? So is also the same, Mariana, Katerina, and Cecilia, if you have anything that you could add to this question in the chat, I invite you to do so. And also I know that Katerina will have to leave us now. So thank you very much, Katerina, for your participation today. We are very much looking forward for the national online trainings to take place in Greece. And thank you for your words today. Before you leave, and I would like to ask everyone if I could take a screenshot of this event so that we can disseminate it in our communication networks. And I will do it in 3, 2, 1.
Thank you, Marcos. Thank you, everybody. I'm sorry that I have to leave, but I hope that we will have the opportunity to discuss further on all this. Okay, thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you, Katerina. So I see that we're having quite an active discussion on the chat. Please continue to do so. And don't hesitate to reach out to us after the meeting if you have any question that you would like that we do not have time to address, or anything else you'd like to share. And for these last minutes of today, I would like to talk about the research report in Romania with Cecilia Popa, that as I introduced first, is the author of this research report, and who will also be our national trainer for professionals and policymakers in Romania. So thank you again, Cecilia, for being here today. And yeah, I know that this report is very extensive and has very interesting conclusions, recommendations. And I would like to ask to you, Cecilia, what would you say that it's something particular or let's say unique about restorative justice in the framework of the Romanian system? What would you highlight as challenges to work with restorative practices in Romania, and perhaps particularly when working with children? I know these are two separate questions, but please go ahead to share your thoughts.
Thank you very much, Marcos, once again. I think I'm the only one who did not introduce herself properly, so just allow me a few seconds to do so. I'm blessed enough to be a consultant with Terre for over a year now. It's been an extraordinary journey, and I'm having the best of my time. On the other job, I do work for the Council of Europe, fighting crime, in particular cybercrime, and also I've been privileged enough to work on restorative justice in the UK and in the US. And I've gathered quite a significant amount of information and knowledge in how this practice is implemented in different places and how it can be implemented in Romania, for instance. Okay, so again, let me just also lay the ground to just have everyone on the same page when we're talking about restorative justice in Romania. Similar with the case in Greece, we don't have restorative justice. We don't have such a concept as justiția restaurativă, as would be in Romania, right? But we do have mediation. So in 2006, a law, the mediation law, entered into force in Romania, based on which we can have mediation for civil and penal cases, right? So this would be number one. But then we also can see practices outside of, restorative practices outside of the justice system. We can find practices such as family decision-making group in a family context, where professionals are trained in this practice to deal with conflicts at the family level. We can also find restorative practices implemented in schools, such as restorative circles. And they are, for instance, implemented by school counselors who've been trained on restorative practices. Unfortunately, when we talk about the restorative practice that we can see outside of the justice system, there is no sort of legal framework for that, right? So when we're talking about the justice system, either we talk about the civil or the penal cases, we do have a law, we do have the mediation law. But when we talk about the other form of intervention, of restorative intervention, we have nothing that's based on a normative act, let's call it. So that's on one aspect. And then if we're talking about the mediation that we're having based on the mediation law in Romania, there are a few aspects that we need to highlight because this is extremely important. Number one is that mediation in Romania for civil opinion in the justice system can only happen for a particular type of crimes. In particular for those for which parties can reconcile, and for those for which the complaint witness, for instance, can withdraw the prior complaint, right? And I'm going to give you some examples of the type of crimes that can end up to mediation, which can be sexual abuse, which can be theft, which can be robbery, right? So that's also very important to mention. Then also, due to some updates to the law, we now can only implement mediation up to the indictment. So up to the point where the prosecutor comes and reads the indictment. After that, in the penal cases, you cannot have mediation after that point. Then another aspect that's extremely important is that in Romania, parties need to pay for mediation. So if they end up deciding to get to mediation, then they have to pay for mediation. This is one of the reasons why some of the professionals in Romania sometimes consider this mediation being transactional sometimes, because unless parties have sometimes a very concrete reason to being there, let's give you an example, such as in the case of a theft, right? So perhaps the victim would like to be part of a mediation as long as they can recover some of the losses in the aftermath of a crime, and then we can have the offender who might want to join in the hope they're going to get away without a sentence, right? So, so that's also in a way problematic reason why, and also extremely important is that the mediation service, if you can call it this way, the service of mediation is basically embedded within the criminal proceedings, if you're talking about the penal cases, right? Which means that a mediation agreement has a direct influence in the criminal proceedings. So the judge can make a decision based on what the parties have agreed during the mediation. And it's also important because we're going to see in other jurisdictions where mediation is completely separated from the criminal justice system, let's call it, right? Where, for example, you go ahead with, as a judge, deciding on the actual case, but then in the same time, the parties can opt for mediation if they like. Reason why also it can be available at any stage, and not only during the criminal proceedings, but even after the offender, for example, has been imprisoned, right? So even after that, while they are in the prison system or in the probation, they can still end up to mediation, which unfortunately is not the case in Romania. And then another part which is extremely problematic is that unfortunately within the mediation law in Romania, it was not, as a whole, the mediation law was not drafted with a focus in mind on the children. In the mediation law, there's only one article, which is 68.2, that refers to minors in the following way, saying that in the case of minors, same guarantees that are provided by the law in the criminal proceedings will be provided as well in the mediation proceedings. And this is the only aspect that refers to minors in the mediation law, right? So that's basically, and I'm trying to also in the same time trying to respond also to Judge Nestor, also to Madame Codres, because Judge Nestor is, is a pioneer in the justice system in Romania, and Madame Codres, I know she works for the Child Protection Service, and I'm trying to connect on how this could be beneficial or how they can use this information further on in their work, right? This is also because Marco's going to follow up saying that we're going to have some trainings in Romania, and you two are more than welcome, and anyone else from Romania who's with us now can join us, because this is the whole point of raising awareness on restorative justice and also finding tools on how we can better assist children in our work. Yeah, this is kind of like, I'm trying to like hurry up so I don't keep you over the expected time, but in the same time, I'm more than willing to discuss with you rather than just me preaching. So Marcos, back to you if anyone has a particular question about Romania.
Thank you, Cecilia, for your presentation. Thank you everyone for your comments that are being shared now on the chat. And I see that concerning Romania, I see a comment from Anna Oprier that said that this needs to be nuanced a bit. Mediation can take place for any type of case and at any point. It is the mediation agreement that can influence on particular cases, which you mentioned, Cecilia, and at some points of the legal process. So perhaps if you could, if you want to react to this comment, Cecilia, if there is anything you would like to add, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, Anna. Lovely to see you here. Okay, so you're saying this needs to be nuanced. The mediation can take place for any type of case and at any point. This would be ideal, I'm assuming you're saying. It is the mediation agreement that can influence on particular cases which you mentioned and some points of the legal process. Yes, so right now, because we don't have mediation implemented for any type of cases at any stages of the criminal proceeding. So that's one point. And this is one of the bigger issues in Romania, because in a way, when you're talking about the justice system, you would like to highlight all these, principles of mediation, but when you're so restricted in implementing it, then you find it harder to implementing it. Reason why there are so many issues and so many professionals raising these issues regarding mediation. So yes.
Thank you, Cecilia. And if there is anything else I would like to add, please go ahead on the chat. It's very welcome. And I see that. Thank you, Beata, for the comments that you shared about your work in Poland and about a bit more about restorative justice happening there. And thank you, Emanuela, for sharing this information about the restorative cities. It's indeed a very, very interesting initiative to hear of, and I'm sure that we would like to hear more. If as soon as you have the video or any other material that you want to share, we can also share with the participants that registered to this session. And we are very close to the end of our meeting today. And I'd like to thank you once again for your participation, for your comments, for your questions. I think that you find it useful, interesting to your work, and to what you're doing in restorative justice, particularly in restorative justice with children. Before we close our meeting today, I would like to talk about a little bit about the next steps of iRestore. As I said, this project is based on three main axes that are research, capacity building, and advocacy. So as for the capacity building part, we will start on February with the national online trainings for professionals and policymakers in Albania, Greece, and Romania. So I'd like to reinforce the invitation that for you to take part in these trainings. So from early February, we will open inscriptions for these trainings. So you'll be asked to fill in a short form. And why we'll ask you to do that is because we are aiming at having a multidisciplinary audience as much as possible. So we will try to ensure that we'll have a balanced and mixed audience in terms of professionals that will attend these trainings. So we have to do some sort of triage before the trainings. So this is what will take place. From the first week of February, this will be opened, and you'll receive an invitation by email. And also, please don't hesitate to contact me or directly Cecilia concerning the national trainings in Romania, Mariana concerning the trainings in Albania, or Katerina concerning the trainings in Greece. We'll be happy to answer your questions if you have any. And in addition to that, to the national online trainings, that sadly we have a limited audience, meaning that we can only have something around maximum 45 participants per country. So we expect that not everyone interested in taking these courses would be able to attend them in this format. But the good news is that we are also preparing, and as I said first to Rogelio, we are also preparing an e-learning course that will be made available on Child Hub, totally free of cost, to anyone interested in taking this course. It will be in a self-paced format, so you can take it whenever you want, for how long you want. And I think our goal here, our schedule, is to have it available in May 2021 on Child Hub. It will be initially available only in English, but later on it will be translated into Albanian, Greek, and Romanian, and perhaps even in more languages. We see iRestore as a first phase of what we're trying to do in Europe with child victims, with restorative justice. So our goal here is really to change behaviors, to change attitudes, to introduce restorative concepts and approaches into the justice system of the justice systems in Europe. So we think that we hope that we can continue this work by piloting projects, as I think that as Laura said, that this is how it happened in Belgium, that you had a lot of piloting projects and activities before restorative justice was in this advanced stage as you have now in Belgium. So this is our goal for Europe entirely. So let's see. I'm very happy to have counted on your participation today. So thank you very much for being here. Thank you, Mariana, Cecilia, Emanuela, and Emiki, and for your participation here as speakers. So we are, well, so I think we can close the meeting for now. Thank you again. You received thank you also. I see now a message from Sylvia. Thank you particularly to you, Silva and Machi, that are here today, because you were part of our restorative justice advisory group. that also took part on the review of our training materials, of our researcher projects, of our researcher reports. So your advice and your contribution to this, to our story, is very, very appreciated. And finally, before we close this meeting, I'd like to share a bit about the Justice with Children platform that we have now in Terre and the World Congress that we'll have for aimed at fighting discrimination amongst the treatment of children in the justice system. This event will take place in November 2021 in Mexico, and I really invite you to find more information about it on the platform that Mariama just shared. I'm sharing again here to everyone on justicewithchildren.org. Over there, you'll find our work that was done related to COVID-19 and how it affected children in detention, how it affected the work we are doing with children. You will also see our information about the World Congress that will take place later this year. And I really encourage you to visit this page and to check our research reports, to continue following us in our social medias, and wish you all good rest of the day. Thank you again for being here today. Please don't hesitate to contact me. My email was shared already here, but it's in case you missed it, it's Marcos, it's my name, how it's written here, marcos.debarros at tdh.ch. So please don't hesitate to send me a message if you have any question, if you need any further information from our side. And thank you again for being here. Thank you, the panelists, and have a nice day.